Hey guys, tonight we are kicking off our shoes, rolling up our linen trousers, and wading ashore onto a lush, humid island in the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean. We are traveling to Yap, a tiny cluster of islands in Micronesia, where the concept of heavy spending is taken quite literally. We are going to walk the ancient stone paths, surrounded by the hum of the jungle, to marvel at the famous Rai Stones, massive limestone donuts that serve as currency. You are going to learn what it's like to be a millionaire in a place where your bank account weighs 4 tons and sits covered in moss by the side of the road. To be honest, considering the stifling equatorial heat, the swarms of aggressive mosquitoes, and the very real possibility of a 2,000-pound coin tipping over and crushing your foot, you probably won't survive this financial audit without needing a very strong drink and a tetanus shot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you are listening from and what time it is. I love imagining these stories playing out in corners of the world I've never seen. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing at the edge of a dense green tunnel of vegetation. The air here doesn't just surround you, it holds you. It is a physical weight, a warm, wet blanket of humidity that settled on your shoulders the moment you stepped off the skiff. You are in the Federated States of Micronesia, specifically on the main island of Yap, or Iwa-Abe as the locals call it. It is quiet here, but not silent. The silence is teeming with life. There is a constant high-pitched buzz of cicadas that sounds like an electrical wire under tension, and the occasional rustle of a land crab scuttling over dry leaves. You adjust your shirt, which is already clinging to your back. The modern world feels impossibly far away. There are no skyscrapers blocking the sun here, no traffic jams, no neon signs flashing open 24 hours. There is only the green of the jungle, the blue of the sky, and the brown of the path stretching out before you. You take your first step onto the Malal. This is not just a trail. It is a thoroughfare of history. The ground beneath your feet is paved with rough, flat stones, fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle by hands that have been dust for centuries. These paths weave through the villages, connecting communities in a web of stone that predates the arrival of European explorers by hundreds of years. You trudge forward, your boots making a dull thud on the rocks. The canopy above is thick, filtering the harsh tropical sunlight into dappled pools of gold and shadow that dance across the ground. As you walk, you notice the smell. It is the scent of intense growth and slow decay, the perfume of damp earth, rotting coconut husks, and the sweet cloying fragrance of plumeria drifting on the heavy air. It is a smell that makes you want to lie down and take a nap, which is convenient, given the theme of tonight's tour. To your left and right, the jungle wall is broken by clearings. And there, sitting quietly in the undergrowth, you see them. The money. At first glance, they look like millstones abandoned by a giant baker. They are massive, circular discs of stone, carved with a hole in the center. Some are small, perhaps a foot across, tucked modestly against the roots of a breadfruit tree. Others are titanic, standing taller than you, looming like silent sentinels guarding the path. This is arain, the traditional currency of Yap Dort. You pause to admire a particularly large specimen. It is nearly 6 feet tall, leaning slightly backward into a bank of ferns. Its surface is weathered, pitted by centuries of rain and wind, and patched with velvety green moss. A tiny lizard, bright green and twitchy, suns itself on the rim of the coin. You have an urge to reach out and touch it, to feel the rough texture of the limestone. It feels cool and gritty under your fingertips. There's a mainstream historical fact you should know while you stand here sweating. Yap has no natural limestone. The island is formed of volcanic rock and shale. Every single one of these stones, from the saucer-sized change to the sedan-sized fortunes, had to be quarried hundreds of miles away in the rock islands of Palau and rafted back across the open ocean on bamboo canoes. It is an economic system built entirely on the premise of extreme logistical difficulty. You continue walking down the Malal. The path widens slightly as you approach a village. The stones here are arranged more deliberately, lining the sides of the road like a bank vault turned inside out. This is the bank of the jungle. There are no security guards, no cameras, no vaults with time locks. The security system here is simply the fact that the money is too heavy to steal. If a thief wanted to run off with your life savings, they would need a team of 20 strong men, logs, ropes, and a great deal of motivation. And since everyone on the island would see them moving it, the heist would be rather pointless. You wipe a bead of sweat from your forehead. The humidity is relentless. It feels as though you are breathing soup. But there is a peacefulness to the heat. It slows everything down. You cannot rush on Yap. If you walk too fast, you overheat. If you stress too much, you miss the point. The island forces you into its rhythm, a slow, deliberate cadence that matches the swaying of the palm fronds overhead. Historians still argue whether the quarrying of these stones began as early as 500 AD, or if it was a later development closer to 1000 AD, coinciding with periods of greater maritime expansion. Standing here, looking at a stone that has likely sat in this exact spot since before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the dates feel irrelevant. The stone exists in a timeline of its own, measured not in years, but in seasons, in storms, and in the slow encroachment of the moss. You pass a village meeting house at HEP. It is a beautiful structure with a high thatched roof and no walls, allowing the breeze to flow through. Outside, a few chickens scratch lazily in the dirt. A dog, sleeping in the shade of a banana tree, opens one eye to look at you, decides you are not a threat, or at least not a threat worth moving for, and goes back to sleep. You envy the dog. A quirky fringe tidbit for you. In the early 20th century, the German colonial administration tried to force the yuppies to repair the footpaths by imposing fines. But since the locals didn't use German marks, the fines were meaningless. So the Germans simply painted black crosses on the most valuable Rai stones, declaring them seized. The locals, terrified of losing their wealth, immediately fixed the paths. Once the work was done, the Germans scrubbed the paint off, and the economy returned to normal. It was perhaps the only time in history that a bank freeze was conducted with a bucket of black paint. You trudge further. The path dips down into a small ravine. The stones here are slick with dampness. You have to watch your step. The silence is deeper here, the canopy thicker. You feel like an explorer discovering a lost civilization, except this civilization isn't lost. It's just very quiet. You pass a stone that has fallen over, half buried in the mud. It looks like a sunken ship. You wonder how much it was worth. Was it a dowry? A payment for a war canoe? Or just a really big tip for a good harvest? The sheer absurdity of it makes you smile. In a world where we stress over digital numbers on a screen, blinking pixels that represent our worth, there's something incredibly grounding about money you can lean against. Money that grows moss. Money that becomes part of the landscape. You stop again to catch your breath. The air is thick with the scent of rain approaching. You can hear the distant rumble of thunder out at sea. The leaves around you seem to brace themselves, turning their undersides up to catch the coming downpour. You are miles from anywhere, standing on a path made of coral, surrounded by giant stone donuts, and you realize you haven't checked your phone in hours. You haven't thought about your emails. You are just here, in the heat, with the rocks. You reach out and pat the side of a massive Rai stone, almost affectionately. It is warm from the day's sun. It feels solid, permanent. It has outlasted typhoons, wars, and colonial empires. It will certainly outlast you, and there's a strange comfort in that. You are just a temporary visitor in the land of the stone giants. You stop in front of a true leviathan. If the other stones were sedans, this one is a double-decker bus. It stands nearly 12 feet tall, a towering monolith of milky white calcite that commands the clearing like a prehistoric altar. You have to crane your neck just to see the top curve, where a fern has taken root, fluttering like a tiny green flag in the stagnant breeze. This isn't just loose change. This is a national reserve. You step closer, your boots sinking slightly into the soft, composting layer of leaves that carpets the jungle floor. The sheer mass of the thing is intimidating. You feel a strange, primal instinct to be quiet, as if waking it up would be a terrible mistake. The stone exudes a presence, a gravitational pull that seems to bend the humid air around it. You reach out again, pressing your palm flat against its flank. The surface is not smooth. From a distance, it looked like a giant aspirin, but up close, it is a landscape in itself. Your fingers trace the rough, jagged peaks and valleys of the carved limestone. It feels like coarse sandpaper or dried coral. You can feel the history in the texture. These weren't sliced by precision lasers or molded in factories. They were hacked out of a cliff face with shell adzes and coral chisels, stroke by agonizing stroke. You lean in, squinting at the surface. You can see the tool marks, tiny, repetitive divots that tell a story of immense, monotonous labor. You try to imagine the sound, chink, 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 echoing in a limestone cave hundreds of years ago. A quirky fringe tidbit for you. The Yappies didn't actually value the limestone for its sparkle or durability, but for its resemblance to the full moon. The brighter and more shimmering the stone, the closer it was to the celestial ideal, although looking at this one now, covered in a century of gray lichens and bird droppings, you have to use your imagination to see the lunar glow. You walk around to the side of the stone. It is thick, maybe 2 feet across at the widest point, tapering slightly towards the edge. It looks impossibly heavy. And it is. This single object weighs several tons. If it fell on you, they wouldn't even bother trying to retrieve your body. You would just become part of the currency's backstory. Your eyes are drawn to the hole in the center. It is a perfect carved navel, large enough for you to stick your head through, though you decide against it, because getting your head stuck in a piece of money seems like a particularly embarrassing way to die. The hole had a practical purpose, of course. It was designed so that a massive pole, likely the trunk of a betel nut tree, could be threaded through. Then, teams of men would lift the stone onto their shoulders or drag it along the ground. But looking at it now, the hole feels like an eye, a cyclopean eye staring unblinkingly back at the jungle. Through the aperture, you can see the twisted roots of a banyan tree on the other side, framing a vignette of the forest. It's a window through time. You sit down on a smaller fallen stone nearby, a mere dime in comparison, to catch your breath and just look at the giant. You wipe the sweat from your neck. The heat is a physical weight, pressing down on you. Here's where the economics get really interesting, and where your modern brain might start to itch. You look at this 12-foot monster and assume it is the most valuable thing on the island. Bigger is better, right? That's the rule of gold bars and diamond rings. But on Yap, the size of the stone is only part of the equation. A mainstream historical fact. The value of a Rai stone is primarily determined by its history, not its dimensions. A massive stone brought over on a modern European ship in the late 19th century might be worth less than a small, jagged stone brought over 300 years ago on a bamboo raft. The value is in the difficulty. It is in the struggle. You look back at the rough carvings. You are looking for the invisible price tag, the story. If the stone was carved by a famous navigator, its value goes up. If the canoe that carried it encountered a typhoon and nearly sank, the value goes up. And the ultimate multiplier? Death. If someone died quarrying this stone, or if men were lost at sea transporting it, the stone becomes priceless. It is bloody money in the most literal, reverent sense. You stare at the moss creeping over the rim. You realize you aren't looking at a coin. You are looking at a memorial. This 12-foot slab is a monument to human effort and sacrifice. In our world, we try to scrub the effort out of money. We want frictionless transactions, tap to pay, instant transfers. We want to forget that money represents labor. But here, the labor is the money. You can't put this in your pocket and forget about it. You have to walk around it. You have to acknowledge it. Historians still argue whether the holes in the center were purely for transport, or if they held a deeper ceremonial significance representing the gateway between the spirit world and the living, given how often the stones were used in funerary rites. Sitting here in the deepening shadow of the limestone, the gateway theory feels plausible. The hole is a void, a nothingness in the center of something massive, and it draws your eye relentlessly. You watch a line of ants marching purposefully across the face of the currency. They are navigating the peaks and valleys of the carving like mountaineers. To them, this isn't wealth. It's just a mountain. It puts things in perspective. You wonder if the men who carved this, who bled on it, who floated across an ocean, ever imagined that one day a tourist, that's you, would be sitting here sweating, watching insects crawl on their magnum opus. The wind picks up slightly, rustling the high canopy. A large leaf drifts down, spiraling slowly, and lands silently at the base of the stone. The jungle is reclaiming it. Slowly, imperceptibly, the roots are wrapping around the base. The moss is eating the surface. The earth is swallowing the rim. But the stone resists. It is stubborn. It is the most stubborn bank account in the world. You stand up, your knees creaking slightly, a sound that seems loud in the quiet clearing. You brush the dirt off your trousers. You feel a strange sense of deference towards the rock. You almost want to bow to it. It has a personality. It is grumpy, immovable, and dignified. You reach out one last time to tap the stone with your knuckle. Thudge, dirt. It is a dull, dead sound. No ring of metal. Just the sound of ancient, compressed bones of sea creatures. You turn back to the path. The Malal stretches out before you, disappearing into the green gloom. There are more stones ahead, more stories, more invisible price tags. You have only just scratched the surface, literally and metaphorically. But to understand why this stone is here, sitting in a jungle thousands of miles from where it was born, you have to imagine the journey. You have to leave the quiet of the path and go out onto the water. You check your watch. It's getting late, but we have time. The sun is still high enough to cast shadows. You grab your water bottle, take a warm sip that offers absolutely no refreshment, and start walking again. You are moving away from the bank and towards the sea, towards the memory of the voyage that made these stones worth more than their weight in gold. You leave the shadowed canopy of the Malal and step out onto the shoreline. The air here is different, saltier, sharper, moving with a restless energy that the jungle stifles. You stand on the edge of the lagoon, your boots sinking into coarse sand mixed with broken coral. The water is a gradient of impossible blues, shifting from clear turquoise at your feet to a deep, bruising indigo at the horizon. You look out at that horizon. It is a straight, unwavering line where the sky meets the sea. Somewhere out there, hidden by the curve of the earth, and about 250 miles of open, shark-infested ocean, lies the island nation of Palau. To understand the stone you just touched, you have to cast your mind across that water. You have to imagine you are not a tourist with a water bottle and a return ticket, but a navigator from 500 years ago. You are standing in a limestone cave in the rock islands of Palau. It is hot. Not the damp green heat of the Yapese jungle, but a dry, blinding, reflective heat. The sun bounces off the white limestone cliffs, searing your retinas. You are covered in white dust. It coats your hair, your skin, your eyelashes, turning you into a ghost. You are holding a tool made of giant clamshell. It is sharp, but it is brittle. For the last 3 months, you have been doing exactly one thing, hitting a wall of rock. Chinkado. Chink. Tonal. A mainstream historical fact for you to chew on. Before the arrival of Europeans and their metal tools in the late 19th century, the Yapese quarried these massive stones using only shell adzes, coral chisels, and fire. They would build fires against the cliff face to heat the rock, then douse it with cold water to crack it, before chipping away at the shape. It was a process of agonizing slowness. Carving a single large rai could take years. You imagine the sound of that labor. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic tapping that echoes off the cave walls, sunrise to sunset. You are carving a perfect circle, a moon, out of the mountain. You have to smooth the faces. You have to carve that central eye. And if you hit it wrong, if a hairline fracture propagates through the calcite, months of work crumble into useless rubble. You would just have to sweep it away and start again. But let's say you succeed. You have your stone. It is beautiful, milky white, shimmering in the sun. It weighs 4 tons. Now, the real problem begins. You have to get this 4-ton donut back to Yap. You're standing on the beach in Palau, looking at your canoe. It is a marvel of engineering, a sleek, single-hulled outrigger capable of dancing over the waves. But it was designed to carry coconuts, fish, and people, not a slab of rock the weight of a Honda Civic. You cannot put the stone in the canoe. It would sink instantly. So, you build a raft. You cut thick, buoyant bamboo stems and lash them together with coconut fiber rope, senet, which you have braided by hand for weeks. You construct a massive floating frame around the stone. You float it in the shallows. Now begins the voyage. You tow the raft behind your canoe, or perhaps lash it between 2 canoes to create a catamaran. You push off from the safety of the Palauan lagoon. The water turns dark. You are in the open Pacific. You are moving at a walking pace. The drag of the raft is immense. The ocean swell lifts your canoe, then drops it, snapping the tow ropes taut with a groan of straining fiber. You watch the stone bobbing in the wake, half submerged. It looks like a sea monster following you home. Historians still argue whether the relationship between the Yapese and the Palauans was one of friendly trade or tense coercion. Some oral traditions suggest the Yapese had to work as servants or even perform magic for the Palauans in exchange for the right to quarry. Others suggest they simply stole into the uninhabited rock islands and hoped no one noticed. Either way, you are carrying a stolen piece of another island, and the sea does not like it. Night falls. There is no light pollution here, just the Milky Way spilling across the sky like spilled milk. You navigate by the stars, reading the rising and setting of constellations to keep your course due east. It is quiet, terrifyingly quiet. Just the slap of water against the hull and the creak of the bamboo raft. But the Pacific is rarely quiet for long. You have to imagine the storm. It starts with a drop in pressure that you feel in your ears. The sky turns a bruised purple. The waves, which were rolling hills, turn into mountains. You are in a wooden canoe towing a 4-ton anchor. When the waves hit, the raft acts like a brake. The canoe surfs down a wave, but the stone drags behind, threatening to pull the stern underwater or snap the hull in two. Rain lashes your face. You are bailing water with a coconut shell, your arms screaming. This is the moment where the value is created. It isn't in the limestone. It is in the fear. You look back at the stone. It is plunging wildly in the foam. If the ropes snap, it is gone forever, sinking miles down to the black bottom of the trench. If you don't cut it loose, it might take you down with it. A quirky fringe tidbit. Many Rai Stones were given names, often the name of the navigator who carved them, or the name of the canoe that carried them. But some were named after the tragedies they caused. There are stones named the Crying Stone, or the Stone Without Tears. If a man died during the voyage, crushed by a shifting stone or washed overboard in a storm, the stone he was transporting became exponentially more valuable. It had claimed a life. It had a sold price attached to it. You cling to the gunwale of your imaginary canoe. You make the choice to hold on. You ride out the storm, soaking wet, shivering, guarding a rock that you can't even eat. Eventually, the storm breaks. The sun rises. And there, on the horizon, is the low green smudge of Yap. You have made it. You glide through the reef pass, the water turning calm and turquoise again. You drag the raft onto the muddy banks of the mangrove forest. You are exhausted. You are sunburnt. You have aged 10 years. But you have brought the moon home. Standing on the beach now, looking at the gentle lapping of the waves, The absurdity of it washes over you again. Why? Why go to such lengths for a rock? But then you think about the gold in Fort Knox, dug out of the ground in Africa, melted down, shipped across oceans and buried back in the ground in America. Is this really any stranger? You turn away from the ocean, your boots crunching on the coral. You walk back towards the village. You have seen the source. You have felt the phantom salt spray of the voyage. Now, you need to understand how this stone, once it lands on the beach, actually works as money. Because, as you are about to find out, the most brilliant thing about Rai Stones isn't how you move them. It's that, once they arrive, you never have to move them again. You wipe the salt spray, or maybe just humidity, from your glasses. The village is ahead. It's time to go shopping, yuppie style. You wander back from the shoreline, leaving the restless energy of the ocean behind. The jungle closes in around you again, but this time, the air feels different. It is late afternoon. The fierce white heat of midday has softened into a golden haze, and the scent of the air has shifted. The rotting vegetation smell is now mixed with the savory, grounding aroma of wood smoke and roasting taro. You follow the smoke back to the village. It is a cluster of thatched-roof houses resting on stone platforms, nestled comfortably among coconut palms and breadfruit trees. It is quiet, but a busy sort of quiet. People are weaving baskets, husking coconuts, and tending to fires. You find a spot to sit on the edge of a stone platform, a one-bee, and you watch. You are about to witness high finance yippee style. In our world, buying something significant, say a car or a house, is a stressful event involving stacks of paperwork, credit checks, and the anxiety of watching numbers disappear from a screen. Here, it looks like a casual chat between neighbors. Two men are standing near the center of the village clearing. One is older, his skin weathered like the bark of the banyan tree. The other is younger, listening intently. They are talking low and slow. There's no shouting, no aggressive handshakes, no signing of contracts in triplicate. If you didn't know better, you'd think they were discussing the weather or the fishing forecast. But you listen closely. They are discussing a feast. The younger man is arranging a massive celebration, perhaps a wedding or a village festival, and he needs to purchase a staggering amount of supplies. Pigs, giant swamp taro, coconuts, and fish. It is a bill that, in New York or London, would require a black credit card. Here, it requires a rock. You watch the younger man gesture toward the edge of the clearing. He points a long, languid finger at a massive Rai stone half buried in a tangle of ferns. It's a beautiful piece, perhaps 6 feet across, with a creamy, yellowish patina that glows in the fading sunlight. It looks like it hasn't moved since the last typhoon, and it probably hasn't. The older man looks at the stone. He nods. He knows that stone. Everyone knows that stone. He knows its name. He knows who carved it. He knows that 3 generations ago, it was brought over on a canoe named the Shark's Tooth. He walks over to it, slaps it affectionately on the flank, much like you might kick the tires of a used car, but with more reverence, and then turns back. He says a few words. The younger man nods. They chew some beetle nut. And that's it. The deal is done. The ownership of the stone has just transferred. The younger man has paid the older man. But here's the magic trick. The thing that breaks the brain of every visiting Western economist. The stone does not move. Not an inch. Not a millimeter. No one is going to fetch a team of 20 men with bamboo poles and hemp ropes to drag this 4-ton slab across the village to the older man's house. That would be exhausted, inefficient, and frankly, ruinous to the flower beds. The stone stays exactly where it is, rooted in the earth-gathering moss. Yesterday, it belonged to the young man. Today, it belongs to the old man. Tomorrow, the old man might use it to buy a canoe from a third family, and the ownership will jump again, while the rock itself continues to sit there, completely unbothered by the economy swirling around it. It is the ultimate form of contactless payment. The mainstream historical fact for you to digest as you watch the men wander off. This system works because the ledger isn't written on paper or stored on a server farm. It is stored in the collective memory of the village. It is a public oral ledger. Everyone in the community knows who owns which stone. If you tried to claim a stone that wasn't yours, the entire village would simply laugh at you and correct the record. It is a blockchain made of gossip and memory, and it is unhackable. You look at the stone again. It suddenly seems different. It isn't just a sculpture. It is a frozen asset. It is a bank account with a physical address. You might be wondering, what about small change? You can't exactly chip off a piece of a 4-ton donut to buy a single coconut. That would be vandalism, and also inflation. A quirky fringe tidbit. The Yapese actually have a multi-layered currency system for everyday purchases. A basket of fish, a jar of syrup, they use yar, or shell money made from pearl shells, or sometimes turmeric packets. The giant Rai Stones are reserved for the big-ticket items: land transfers, alliances, dowries, or political favors. Or, interestingly, apologies. There is a specific type of transaction called voyage, which is essentially an apology payment. If you accidentally insult a chief, or your pig digs up your neighbor's garden, you don't send a sorry card. You transfer ownership of a Rai Stone. It is a way of saying, I am so sorry about the inconvenience that I am giving you this 2-ton symbol of my ancestors' suffering. It is a very effective way to ensure people remain polite. You lean back against the warm stone of the platform. The humidity has dropped with the sun, and a gentle breeze is rustling the thatch. You feel a sense of relief on behalf of the villagers. Imagine the stress if they actually had to move their money every time they spent it. The paths would be gridlocked with rolling stones. The noise would be deafening. Instead, the economy is silent. It is static. The wealth is all around you, visible, tangible, but utterly still. Historians and economists still argue whether Rai Stones fit the technical definition of money. Some argue they are more like social prestige tokens, similar to the crown jewels, objects that hold value but aren't really circulated. Others argue that because they can be used to clear debts, they are true currency. Sitting here, watching the village settle into its evening rhythm, the debate feels academic. It works. That's all that matters. You watch a group of children playing tag near the sold stone. One of them jumps through the hole in the center, laughing. They are playing on someone's life savings. In our world, playing on a stack of cash would be seen as garish. Here, it's just part of the furniture. The juxtaposition makes you chuckle. You think about your own wallet tucked away in your back pocket, or maybe back in the hotel safe. You think about the digital numbers on your banking app. We like to think our system is advanced because it is invisible. We move millions of dollars with a click, beams of light bouncing off satellites. But really, is it that different? We don't move the gold bars out of the Federal Reserve every time we buy a coffee. We just agree that the ownership has changed. The Yapese just figured that out centuries ago, and they did it with much better aesthetics. The sun is dipping below the tree line now. The shadows of the stones are stretching out, becoming long, dark fingers reaching across the path. The sold stone is now half in shadow. It looks sleepy. It has done a hard day's work of being worth a fortune, all without lifting a finger. You feel a kinship with it. You too are enjoying the art of doing absolutely nothing. You are sitting still, letting the world rotate around you. You are observing, not participating. The older man from the transaction walks past you, carrying a basket of yams. He smiles, a toothy, red-stained grin from the betel nut. He looks happy. He is a richer man than he was an hour ago. He doesn't have the stone in his pocket. He doesn't have a receipt. He just has the knowledge. And in a place where community is everything, the knowledge is enough. But there is one final story you need to hear. A story that takes this concept of immobile money to its absolute, logical, and slightly hilarious extreme. It is the story of the richest family on the island and a fortune that no one has ever seen. You stand up from the stone platform, stretching your legs. The twilight is turning the jungle a deep, velvety blue. The mosquitoes are starting their evening patrol, but you don't mind. You are captivated by the logic of this place. You want to see just how far this belief in value can stretch before it snaps. You walk back towards the Malal, the stone path glowing faintly in the dusk. We have one last stop before we let the island sleep. One last lesson on the nature of value, hidden not in the jungle, but in the memory of the sea. You continue your walk as the last vestiges of daylight bleed out of the sky. The green canopy above turns a deep bruised purple, and the air cools, settling against your skin like silk. You are walking away from the village now, back toward the coast, but your mind is still lingering on that transaction you witnessed. The idea of a stone that never moves, yet changes hands, is fascinating. But there is one final legend on Yap that pushes this logic even further. A story that balances on the razor's edge between genius and madness. You step carefully over a tree root that snakes across the Malal. The jungle is waking up for its night shift. Fireflies are beginning to blink in the undergrowth, tiny, drifting stars that mirror the vast galaxy waiting to emerge overhead. As you walk, consider the ultimate problem of the Rai Stones. Transport. We talked about the storms, the rafts, the danger. But what happens when things go wrong? Many years ago, generations before you arrived with your hiking boots, a prominent family commissioned a massive stone. It was to be the crown jewel of their wealth, a stone so large it would secure their status for a century. The quarrying in Palau was successful. Carving was exquisite. The stone was loaded onto a raft, and the long journey home began. But near the end of the voyage, just off the coast of Yap, a violent storm descended. The waves rose up like walls of dark glass. The canoe towing the raft was in danger of being dragged under. The navigator, a man of immense skill and heavy heart, made the only choice he could. He cut the ropes. You can imagine the scene. The snap of the fiber line, the sickening lurch of the raft as it was swallowed by a trough, the white foam closing over the limestone. The stone sank. It plummeted down through the blue, past the reef sharks, past the coral, settling into the silt of the ocean floor, hundreds of feet down. It was gone. The crew returned home, alive but destitute. They had nothing to show for months of labor, but blistered hands and a story of failure. They stood before the village elders, heads bowed, and testified to the size and quality of the stone. They described its dimensions. They swore to its perfection. They explained that it wasn't their fault it was lost. The sea had simply claimed it. The elders listened. They chewed their betel nut. They deliberated. And then they issued a ruling that would make a modern central banker weep with joy. They decided that the accident was not the fault of the crew. The labor had been performed. The stone existed. The fact that it was currently resting at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean was a mere logistical detail. It was decided that the family still owned the stone, and its value was fully recognized. You stop walking. You look out through a gap in the trees at the darkened ocean. Somewhere out there, in the crushing blackness of the deep, sits a massive limestone donut. It is covered in barnacles. Fish swim through its center hole. It has never been seen by a living soul for 100 years. And yet, it is still spent. This invisible stone has been used to buy land. It has been used to settle debts. It is traded just like the stones sitting in the village, even though no one can touch it, see it, or verify it's even there. It exists purely because everyone agrees it exists. A mainstream historical fact. This specific story was made famous by the American economist Milton Friedman, who used the stone in the sea as a perfect metaphor for the gold standard. He argued that digging gold out of the ground in South Africa and reburying it in a vault in Fort Knox was essentially the same as letting a stone sit at the bottom of the ocean. It's all just a collective agreement on value. You chuckle softly to yourself. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? The idea that value isn't physical. It's mental. It's social. The stone is real because the community says it is. A quirky fringe tidbit. During the Japanese occupation of Yap in World War II, Soldiers confiscated some of the surface stones to use as construction material for anchors and airstrips. They physically destroyed the currency, but the locals simply shrugged. In their minds, the spirits of the stones remained with the original owners, regardless of whether the physical rock was crushed into gravel. You can break the rock, but you can't break the receipt if the receipt is in your head. Historians still argue whether this fiat currency system on Yap evolved out of necessity, because moving the stones was too hard, or if it was a sophisticated philosophical leap that predated Western banking theory by centuries. Standing here in the dark, you suspect it was a bit of both. It was a system born of sweat, engineered by risk, and perfected by laziness. You reach the end of the path. The lights of your small eco-lodge are glowing warmly through the trees. The journey is ending. You are tired. The humidity has seeped into your bones, weighting your limbs. You walk up the wooden steps to your room. It is simple, open air, with a thatched roof and wide windows covered only by mosquito netting. You step inside. The floorboards creak softly, a welcoming sound. You strip off your damp clothes, peeling away the layers of the day. You pour a glass of water from a pitcher on the table. It is cool and clean. You sit on the edge of the bed. It is draped in a white mosquito net that hangs from the ceiling like a ghostly canopy. You check your pockets. You have your wallet. You have your credit cards. Thin strips of plastic with magnetic strips. They feel flimsy compared to the giants you met today. You wonder, if you dropped your credit card in the ocean, would the bank be as understanding as the Yapese elders? Probably not. You climb into bed, maneuvering under the net. The sheets are cotton, cool against your skin. You lie back, your head sinking into the pillow. You close your eyes. Outside, the island is singing. The cicadas have quieted down, replaced by the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the distant, low roar of the reef. The air is still warm, but a fan in the corner turns slowly, pushing a gentle breeze across your face. Whir, whoosh, whir, whoosh. You think about the stones. You think about the one leaning against the banyan tree, covered in moss. You think about the one sitting in the village square, invisible ownership lines connecting it to a new master. And you think about the one in the deep dark, miles offshore, sitting silently in the silt, holding its value against the pressure of the ocean. You realize that you too are like the stone. You are heavy. You are settling. You don't need to move to be valid. You don't need to do anything. You can just exist. You can just be. Wind down. The island of Yap is drifting into the night now. The fires in the villages have burned down to glowing red embers, casting long, soft shadows that dance on the thatched walls. The chatter of the day has faded into silence. The weaving is done. The trading is done. The stone paths are empty, save for the moonlight that filters through the palm fronds, painting silver stripes across the ancient coral blocks. Everything is still. And the massive limestone coins, the guardians of this green world, stand motionless in the dark. They are heavy, grounded, anchored to the earth by centuries of rain and roots. They are not going anywhere. And neither are you. You let your breathing slow down. In, deep and slow, filling your lungs with the warm, scented air. Out, long and steady, letting your shoulders drop into the mattress. You feel the weight of your body pressing down, supported, held. You are as solid as the stone. The sound of the ocean is a steady rhythm in the distance. Crash, hush, crash, hush. It is the sound of the same waves that carried the rafts, the same water that holds the invisible treasure. It is a lullaby that has been playing for 1,000 years. It washes over you, smoothing out the edges of your thoughts, eroding your worries just as the tide erodes the sand. There's no more value to be calculated, no more debts to be paid. The ledger is closed for the night. The jungle surrounds you, a protective wall of living green. The dark is soft and velvety. You are safe here. You are quiet. You are rich in rest. Drift down now, down into the deep, quiet water. Down where it is still. Down where it is peaceful. End of script. Sweet dreams.